All right, so the next weird set of ghosty stories, or the next weird ghosty story, is going to be about Corina Silva. And this one they might actually take down because I don't know. They might still consider this one like an active investigation, but on the same hand, like not really doing anything isn't really much of an active investigation. So I'm just gonna roll with it. I knew Corina Silva. She worked at the Fast Break Food Mart in Beverly, down the street from Beverly Manor Apartments, which is the ghetto that I used to live in. The ghetto where I used to live on Files Creek Road. And Files Creek is named after the Files Creek Massacre there in Beverly. All right, so Corina, at the time, she had some pretty wealthy parents, I guess, that lived up on a mountain somewhere. I never did meet her parents. She definitely did not take me home to meet Ma and Pa. She would take me places though, like, and she would show up to my house. She would bring all kinds of stuff from the store. Like when the store was gonna throw their stuff out, she would bring a lot of it, almost all of it, to my house, and then I would then disperse or dispense, or I would then give all of that throwaway stuff from Fast Break, gallons of milk, all that stuff. I'd be able to pass it around the hood and keep it at my house. And this would have been, how many years ago was this? This is going to be over 5 years ago. Wait. Yes. So this is definitely over 5 years ago, maybe even leaning towards 6, 7 years ago, somewhere in there. Yeah, Corina. All right. Corina had a couple cars. She had a little black car and she had a little blue car. She had a boyfriend at the time that I knew her, and within the time frame that I knew her, she would have 2 different boyfriends, Robert and Garrett, right? And then she also kind of, I don't know if she was getting her Mac on there with Corey at the end or not, or if he was just like hanging out. But Corey ended up being part of the end. He ended up being one of the bad guys in the end of things, who was looming around and hovering in the room when she and I were discussing important affairs. And that would have been one of the last times that I would actually see her and interact with her, which would still be a couple years before she was taken out. But she would have been one of the witnesses to attest that a piece of evidence that I found relating to potential human remains was not, in fact, a piece of trash or a piece of food the way that law enforcement at the time had written it up, or the way that they had somebody else write it up, because they, of course, would not write that up in their own report. I would definitely not believe. So she was one of the people who saw the remains. She and Corey would have seen it, and she would have offered then to babysit for me so that I could go to the police department, or she would try to insist that I, wait until the next day. But I was worried because Corey was there in the room, and I felt like I would put myself in danger if I went immediately back to the house after telling someone what my plans were, especially Corey, because he was affiliates with the same people that I was, worried about. And being like bullied and kind of abused by and stuff. And things had gotten really bad. And so I was worried that night that if I didn't hurry up and go straight to the police, which I tried to do, and they deliberately dragged things out and tried to avoid me for hours. They were so badly a part of it that they avoided me to try to get me to leave so that they would not have to interact with me at all. And then at the very end of things, like, they wanted to pretend that they didn't know that I'd been out there the whole like, it was just ridiculous. It's kind of a long story. But Corina was one of the people who, she was there, and she was there before I went out there. And then she got to see the results of me getting out of jail after they did not, after they just treated my situation like I was just crazy or whatever, and tried to just and just completely disregarded what I'd said. And I would return into Corina's midst without my vehicle, without any of my kids, without any money. The police had taken my money. They'd taken my driver's license, and it was a valid driver's license. They'd impounded my car. They'd had a protective service worker come pick my kid up at 3:00 in the morning. And then I'd received an eviction notice. And they tried to lock me up in a mental institution within a few days after that. Between everyone working together, they were able to make sure that I handed it to one person to hold on to for me. And then they wanted to play and pretend that they thought that it was drugs that I'd handed them, and that they threw it away so that they wouldn't get in trouble for it. And no, I'd handed them human remains, and I'd even told them what it was, and I told them the whole story and everything. And they decided to play around, and they even said that they threw it in the trash. And I sat there and went through the trash in front of them, and went through the entire trash looking for, what I'd just gone to jail and lost my kid and lost everything and been called crazy over and everything else. Looked for this piece of thing that I very specially put into a brand new Ziploc bag to present it to everybody that I needed to. Over 30 people saw it, and apparently no report was made about it. And all they did was just call Child Protective Services and send them to deal with me and to take my kid and to say that I was crazy. And so that was a really big mess. And Corina Silva was the one who was the main witness to the fact that they had done that. And she also saw what was in the bag. And, she understood. And, like I said, it offered to help me with my kid and everything. She had been around. There'd been some weird supernatural things going on involving the Fast Break Food Mart. Some footage that she'd captured and that she'd seen. Imagery that was captured from that store. And she said that there was somebody walking, and that that an entity appeared behind them, there was imagery of someone falling from a portal that opened up in the sky in the parking lot there in Beverly, and someone dropped down out of it. She named the person and everything. She was like, "You don't know this person?" And I was like, "No, I don't know this person." But it was like somebody that just like hangs out that like everybody knows there. A portal opened up. That person hit the ground running, ran for their lives from what she explains is an entity, a dark entity that comes out of the portal, also hits the ground running and chases after whoever the dude is. And that's one of the videos that they caught, that apparently that they had to turn in. And but that wasn't the only one. There were apparently other videos. Well, then I knew about criminal offenses that were being performed out in the parking lot, that if I'd had video of, that I could have solved a lot of problems for all of us, and potentially even prevented her eventual demise. I hate to say it, but and she would not release that footage to me, which I was upset about, but I couldn't really do anything about it because she worked there, not me. I then even tried to work there so that I could gain all the different footage that I needed. But it was like impossible. And yeah, it was like anybody who worked at that store, they got the real tea, dude. Like they even got the supernatural tea. But yeah, there were other supernatural things that happened. Like I can't recall what all they were. That was the most impressive story that I can remember her telling me. Now, Corina, she used to work for the Pentagon, and another name for her, I guess her first name was actually the Butcher. And now I think that I am allowed to talk about this because I'm talking about somebody who's passed away already. So it's like a story about them. And I know that the first story that I told about Natalie wasn't that good. I'm really talking about, because that one especially was somebody who I just barely knew for a second. It was a very traumatic situation. Everyone was being traumatized all around me. People's lives and homes were being destroyed. It was a really bad state of affairs. And, I really feel that she'd stepped out on a limb to try to help me while she was still alive, and that people had caught her, which I didn't really add that into the story because I'm almost afraid to be telling you guys these stories. But yeah, they actually did catch Natalie trying to help me, I think. And I think that that's part of the reason why why whatever happened to her ended up happening to her, which they try to say was only an asthma attack. So that complicates things even more. But here in for Corina Silva's story, I don't know that they released any information, and her family may not want any information released, or, the feds or whoever may not want information released or whatever. But it's been a hot minute now, and for both of these cases. And there's a lot of people who were close to Corina who did have a lot of information, and none of those people were questioned, and I can understand how people might want to sit back and just watch and see how things unfold. But on the same hand, sometimes sitting back and just watching and seeing how things unfold, and you just doing that for 5, 6, 8, 12, 14, 15, 20 years kind of almost makes it seem like nobody actually cares about the situation, and that people were deliberately not investigating it. So she said that like law enforcement would have to like come out and actually pick up these videos that they would capture out there at Fast Break, right? Which was just insane to us. And I had a feeling that Corina could have been what I'm going to call a send-in. Just basically, I explained before that I was kind of like a kept person. Well, my family kind of kept me like 1,500 miles away from all of them, but stuck in this place where they paid people in the community to like keep an eye on me and keep things a certain way and only allow me to do certain things. And like my kids and I were just trapped there, dude. And I guess that we were under some secret conservatorship, and no one was legally obligated to inform us that someone else had conservatorship over us or me. And they were also collecting checks in my name behind my back, and spending all that money and not, helping me with anything. So, they were committing fraud using my identity and a false conservatorship. And I guess that is still happening or happening again. But Corina did tell me that she used to work for the Pentagon. She used to have a government job. And like I said, at the time, she was working at Fast Break Food Mart, which is where you go if you want to get the hookup on the pizza. And like After I lost everything because I tried to get help that night and I tried to turn more than just remains in. I also tried to turn in um, my kids' bedding because I was worried that something was happening to my kids. I couldn't get law enforcement to listen to me. I couldn't get Child Protective Services to listen to me, and then they turned around and they made it like people made it to where I just lost everything overnight, and it was really horrible. And like this dude Garrett would hit me up, and Garrett was like this super dweeby dork. I think he might even share the same birthday as me, as I have. Like he had this ex old lady named Tyra. We all lived out in Beverly Manor, and pretty much everybody in Beverly Manor just um, smokes uses a lot of cannabis, especially. They do a lot of everything there because it's the ghetto, but that was mainly like what anybody that hung out with me, that was mostly like, what would go down. Um, and Garrett was a pretty weird dude. I'm not gonna lie. One time I caught Garrett greasing the hinges uh, on my kids' door and all the doors in my house. After that, I had to make Garrett leave. That was pretty bizarre, and I know that he wasn't doing it just for himself. I know that somebody had asked him to do that, which sucked really bad. And after that, you couldn't hear at all when any of the doors open and closed. Yeah, thanks, Garrett, for all your hard work. But yeah, Garrett hit me up and he was like telling me that Corina passed away, and I was like, "What?" He was telling me that he said it's all in my messenger messages from my other accounts that you guys hijacked and took over and stuff. But Garrett talking about how that Corina was found wrapped in a rug or something on the side of the road, which ended up later on I heard isn't even really what happened. And he tries to tell me all this stuff about her and that she passed away and that he doesn't know what happened, and that he thinks his dad might have something to do with it and all this stuff. And then I start wondering like what happened. I've totally forgot about Garrett's parents. And then he starts telling me that his mother lives with Robert. Well, Robert was Karina's ex boyfriend, so it's weird that Robert and Garrett's mom are living together. And it's like, well, wait a minute. Does Garrett's mom have access to the world? Like, why is Garrett's mom supposed to be living with Robert and supposedly not want to talk to anybody instead of living out in the country with Garrett's dad, where she was? And then all of a sudden, you're telling me that Corina has passed away too. And he's like talking to me about how upset that he is about Corina and how he's just so grief stricken and stuff like that. But then at the same hand, then he's trying to get his Mac on with me. And I think that he even goes so far as to tell me about, how nice my behind was, and about how, it was just this famous behind and all this. Well, anyway, so it's Garrett trying to get his Mac on with me after while he's telling me that she's passed away. And then, so I think that that's weird. And I end up hitting Robert up. Well, then Robert even acts weird to me too. And acts like he can't answer any of the questions and is acting real robotic and stuff. And then the person who is actually at my house at the time, who is staying with me while I'm having these conversations with these people, they're getting weirded out and acting fidgety and real quiet. And it sounds like they're in a panic that we're talking about Corina. And I'm like, why is everybody acting so weird about Corina? You know what I mean? And then that's whenever it hits me. It's like, oh, what if she got taken out because from that cop? You know what I mean? Because where that cop and that CPS worker lied and tried to say that the remains that I showed up and they tried to say that I was just crazy, that I was completely batshit crazy and bonkers, and that's why they were able to take my kid and do all this other horrible stuff and take my car take my money, take my driver's license, and like basically temporarily end my life. She was a witness to that. And they made sure that she passed away 2 months before they would even think about giving me my kid back. And then as soon as they gave me my kid back, which was on 420, which was a big joke to them, because that's what they lied. They lied and turned around and said that I lost my kid because I smoked pot. But no, that is not why they took my kid. They took my kid while they were while I was trying to turn in remains of like human remains and real like legitimate evidence. Like I had the evidence with me, and had like stories and concerns and needed help and needed an investigation to be started. I had information. There was even a little boy who had told his counselors, and CPS showed up, talked to his family about it and everything. This kid talking about how these kids were being forced to fight like gladiators out on private property out in Durban, West Virginia, out in the mountains in the forest. And then in a roundabout way, I found out that that was true, and that the kid had been, had been treated so badly. He tried to speak up, and I found out that things like this labyrinth and these labyrinths and these combat situations had been set up for people in a couple different places out in the mountains. And I would go out to ask. I would eventually start getting really weirded out by everything that would lead me finding this information out, dude. Like I would go out to Corina's workplace, to Fast Break, and I would ask the chicks working there. I would order pizza, and I would ask them about Corina. Well, I was asking them about Corina, and they deliberately made it take like 30 minutes for them to give me my pizza. And they had a trooper show up, like a state trooper show up and collect the video of me asking about Corina. And it was so weird. Like the whole time that I knew her, she was talking about the state troopers showing up to get footage while she was there. And then all of a sudden the state troopers were showing up to get footage of someone asking about her. Super weird, dude. Like I realized then that was another time that I realized that people might be trying to set me up, or that or that people were already predisposed to be thinking that they were going to be gathering information against me or whatever. Like it was all twisted around to be really weird. And this was not the first time, like I said in the last video about Natalie. Like this wouldn't be the first time that it would seem like I was showing, or I was trying to get information about stuff myself, and it would seem like shit was set up to make it look like that I would discover in my investigations, in my personal investigations, that I was actually the one who was set up to be the perpetrator or the culprit in these affairs. So like, and at one point I really needed a firearm, and I was scared to death for my kids because I had just been made a homicide of these really heinous murders, right? Well, right out at the place where those were held, I saw these vehicles, and a couple of vehicles. One was really nice, and the other one I recognized. I knew that was one of Corina's vehicles. Well, I thought, well, that's weird that I'm seeing her vehicle out here. How could they be affiliated with, you know what I mean? Those are people who are Beverly people, and now I'm seeing their vehicle out here, around Audra State Park. That's weird that these two circles of people were linked together, and I didn't put that together until now. And then I also needed help with a firearm, and I was going to trade one of my Jeeps for one. That's how badly I was worried that my children and I might meet the same fate as some of these other women. Um, and while I was going down this holler to this guy's house named Jake, and I was kind of worried about Jake. Like, I didn't know if he was a safe person. I didn't know if he was one of the bad guys or not. And as I passed in front of his house, because I was kind of scheduled the time to talk to him and stuff. I looked over in front of his garage, and I saw there Corina's car, one of Corina's cars, and it was perfect. Her perfect blue, shining car sitting there. And I couldn't believe my eyes, and I just thought, that can't really be her car. That can't really be her car. And I would go up the road a ways, and I would turn around and come back, and then I would look, and her car wouldn't be there. And I would think surely that wasn't really her car, and surely they wouldn't have been able to hide her car that quickly. And I thought, what if that was God? What if that was the spirit of Corina? And what if something or someone else or some, you know what I mean? What if universe made me see her car there to let me know, to warn me that Jake is one of the bad guys, and that I'm not going to get what I want here, and or that I'm going to have to potentially run away from here or be dishonest with this guy in order to save my life, which it did end up happening like that. That he did end up being one of the bad guys, and he does have a pig farm out there. So it was really smart of me to get out of there very quickly, which I didn't do quickly enough, but still yet I understood because of this vision that I saw, or I maybe did see a car that was hers or just like hers, because when I rolled up, the garage was closed, and for all I know, it could have been her car sitting out there. I don't know. They could have been hiding it there the whole time. And it was just bizarre to me to see both of Corina's cars in two different places that I knew of within, a good 30-mile radius of each other, but at the same time, within 30 and closer range than that, from her own parents' house and from where she was living at the time, which I'm not sure where she was when she actually passed away, if she was still in the house over by Fast Break or not. But whenever I went in and asked the ladies behind the clerk what happened to her, they told me that she was found in her own house. So they gave me a story that was completely different than Garrett's story. And Garrett acts like he was the one to find her firsthand. And even in the messages, his story is different from theirs. And I really did need Corina. I really did need her to corroborate my story and to be there to testify against these people, because I was going to sue them for doing this to me. What they did was really bad. I was a mother who was really terrified and in a very dangerous situation. I'd been attacked and assaulted. I was worried that my children were being hurt. There was just way too much going on. I finally broke down and did need help from the police. And apparently I should have just taken my kids and just completely run from that area, because the police it was like they were set up to not help me. It was like they were set up to know that I was on my way. And then even after that, I was treated so poorly, and it would just go on for years. And, they would change the reasoning around to why they took the kid, which is also something that needs to change. You guys can't just change the reasoning later as to why you've arrested someone or why you've arrested their children from them. Corina was kind of a fun lady. She was all right. She was kind of one of the bad guys, I'm not gonna lie, but she was also one of the good guys. I feel like she was being manipulated and abused and victimized in ways that she wasn't aware that people really did yet. Either that, or she was undercover, and she was doing her best to play along to try to save her own life, and she just could not do well enough. Or it could also be that that people found out that she was the only witness that I had that she was willing to testify for me, and that they were afraid of me using her against them and against that system. Um, I I'm not real entirely sure because I wasn't there. I wasn't around there in the end. I was in Buchanan, and I guess she was in Beverly, and she would have passed away in January, and then I would have gotten my kid back in April, just right afterwards. And my plan wasn't to press charges, go after anybody, try to sue the groups and try to get testimony. My plans wasn't to do any of that until the moment that I got my kids back. And so I do think that the whole group of them did have Corina kind of taken out of the equation, because she was someone who would have spoken up and testified on my behalf and against the corruption, and that I would have had like a very cut and dry lawsuit, and it would have ended things and made it to where nobody could do this to me anymore. And unfortunately, her life was taken early, and I was not able to get that help. But Corina, like I said, she was very generous. She did show up a lot. She would take me places, especially if she knew that the kids really needed it. Sometimes she was a little bit, she did have her crappy moments. There was a substance abuse issue at the time. I wasn't engaging in it wasn't a struggle for me. You know what I mean? Like I wasn't it I did there everybody basically at the time, there was like some serious drug issues going on, which is how this Officer Boatwright guy would be noticed to begin with, because everybody would hear this rumor, which this was pretty loud at the time, that there was this Officer Boatwright, and that he was secretly a dealer. And this would tie back around later, okay? This would tie back around later because the officer who testified falsely against me, who Corina could have testified against to win my case against him, that was Officer Boatwright, okay? And Officer Boatwright ends up being the corrupt cop who, when I leave that evening to hand over the remains, it ends up being Officer Boatwright who stops me from being able to make the report and does all this other shady stuff, like has to do all this other shady stuff as quickly as he can and hurry up and have my kid taken and put me in jail and all this stuff right away. Like it was hella crazy weird. And then Officer Boatwright would also, I think there was another witness about Officer Boatwright too, and his name is Will. And Officer Boatwright, I think, and them are responsible for having Will's ex-old lady overdosed. and for having his kid taken, and for a number of things happening to them. Because Will was one of the people to see Officer Boatwright walk out of a trap house with a briefcase full of money after bringing one in, like came in and exchanged briefcases and stuff like that. And then Officer Christopher Boatwright has gotten in trouble for all different kinds of things, and has been moved around a little bit from Elkins to other departments elsewhere. But he was the guy who, in my case, was the officer who told me that if I didn't give him the password to my phone, and if I didn't unlock my phone for him, that he was going to have my kids taken and have me thrown in jail. He literally was trying to unlock my phone, and he told me that if I did not give him the password to my cell phone, he was going to have my kids taken away from me, and he was going to have me thrown in jail. And I was like, bro, I am not just, like, as he's actively trying to break into my phone like some kind of fiend, like a gremlin. Like, he's literally, I mean, he might as well be foaming at the mouth, desperately trying to break into my phone because he found this set of keys in my car. Well, I find out that it's these gun keys, and that I've been set up with Officer Boatwright's gun keys that apparently Tabitha got a hold of and ended up making their way roundabout to me. And here's Officer Boatwright freaking out because I have his Taurus gun keys to a Taurus firearm or something like that. Well, then he tries to shrug it off and say that those aren't really his keys. There's even a life insurance policy keychain on it. And you watch him look at that life insurance policy keychain, and his heart sinks into the ground, and he's frantically, spastically trying to get into my cell phone and, makes that threat. And I'm like, bro, I was like, you're not going to find the answers that you want in my phone. I was like, the conversation about the gun keys didn't happen on the phone. I was like, I'm telling you, I was like, you're not going to find what you want about those keys on my phone, dude, and shit. He was really tripping out about it. Which I could understand an officer tripping out about finding his own property in somebody's car. But, like, first of all, they didn't need to be searching my car. They didn't need to be going through my car. They didn't need to be doing any of that. I showed up as a victim, covered in bruises. Even when he handcuffed me to put me in the back of the car, I mean, my arms were black, completely black. I was just covered in bruises and needed help so badly. Like I had stopped and talked to a Go Mart, and I told everybody at a Go Mart there in Elkins, I'd show them these remains in a bag. And there was at least 5 or 6 different people in Elkins, West Virginia at the Go Mart at nighttime who would have seen a chick show up with a digit in a bag. And at least one of those people would all look at it. At least one or two of them would confirm that that was in fact a human digit, and that it was in fact a child's and not an adult's. And they were all quite concerned, and they all did think that I should turn it into the police, which was what I was trying to do. And that was one of the reasons, like, I hoped that it would help me to, like, save my kids and I, because I worried that we had been, like, really specially selected, and that we were, potentially being exploited and hurt, and that people were sneaking in on us while we were asleep and all this stuff, which I've mentioned a lot of in my other videos. And then eventually Corina I also felt that the spirit of Corina helped me go to the state of New York. And I don't know what Corina Silva might have to do with Irving, New York. And she's just one of the spiritual forces that I felt helped lead me there. And you got to understand that, like what I went through was real. It was also after being made a witness to these homicides, and then to know that the other people who I knew personally, like Corina, may have fallen victim to the same kind of brutality that I had just heard. Like, it was just such darkness. It was just this darkness, you guys, that I just had to just get out. I didn't want to forget it. I needed to map it out. I needed to learn exactly what it was, and then I needed to carry that story out of the darkness with me and tell people whenever I got on the other side of things. Because definitely what happened to few of these people that I'm going to be bringing up, it most certainly wasn't right. This wasn't right. There's no reason for people who are only 20, 30, 40, 50 years old to just pass away like this, or to be brutally, um, potentially mutilated. I don't even know what happened to her. I'm sorry to put it that way. This is a really messed up story, and there's been no closure, and this is only the second one that I'm beginning to tell. There's a handful of them at least. So I feel like that, if there was going to be any closure from the perspective of law enforcement, somebody would have already gotten on that. And I feel that for any death, that we should be given a safe place or a safe way to share how we feel about that person, or about, how we might be haunted. Some of us are very deep feelers and thinkers. It's difficult for me to just sit around year after year, decade after decade, and keep my mouth shut about, people who are important, who they passed away and we haven't brought it up since. That's weird, isn't it? I hope that whenever I pass away, people actually, I would hope that I would never pass away. But if I ever actually did pass away, I would hope that people would be willing to speak about it afterwards, and that it wouldn't be a big secret, that everybody was just allowed to keep a secret. That's weird. That's really weird to me. Like, does nobody have anything good to say about her? Like, I can at least say that sometimes she was a good lady. Sometimes she was a great lady. She was a good listener. I mean, she was Corina. She was at least cool with, hippies doing their thing. She was an all right lady. She wasn't that bad. Sure, she might not have let me watch all the surveillance footage that I wanted to watch, but that didn't mean she was a bad lady. She might have had addiction issues sometimes, but that didn't mean she was a bad lady. She was an adult. She was a full-ass grown adult. She had a full life. She was, as far in my eyes, as far as I'm concerned, allowed to do whatever she wanted. I know that she had a daughter that she loved a lot. I know that she did never want her daughter to know any of that sort of stuff. But I'm just being real, like, she was a good person, and she was really good about caring about definitely that person and her family. She did care a lot about her family, I can say that much. She would stop everything in her life to make sure that she was there to be able to answer those phone calls as they came to her from her family members. She was very attentive. Corina was very attentive. She was not going to be a neglectful person, and she was not going to be the kind of person who would try to start fights or would try to create drama or chaos. She was actually a pretty concerned and caring chick. Like, in the grand scheme of things, even if Corina was one of the bad guys who was sent into me, I vouch for Corina. I went so far as to travel 400 miles to the state of New York to try to make the reports that I had about Corina. And I do feel that her ex-boyfriends, both of her ex-boyfriends, were involved in what happened to her. I'm just calling you guys out right now, Robert and Garrett. And I already called you guys out. So if you're still living free, I know that it's just because I am the one who called you out, because everybody likes to play that I am specially not allowed to make reports, and that I am not allowed to solve investigations. Only you guys are allowed to solve investigations. So that's cool, whatever. And whenever I actually got to New York and I was trying to give information to law enforcement there about what happened. It in part was because like I knew that law enforcement where I was had to be involved in what was happening. And I knew that I had to go somewhere else and tell somebody else, and that law enforcement around me wasn't going to listen, that they were all part of it. There's no way that atrocities like that are committed for so long. What I was made a witness to, there's no way that that goes on and that the police don't know about it. You know what I mean? When you discover something that's that loud and obvious and terrible and heinous and astonishing, and you could almost guarantee that the police already know about it, and you're not going to be able to tell them what's going on. And at the time, they had, while they set me up to be a witness to those homicides, they had expected me to run away and try to, tell the police right then what had happened. There was no way I was going to do that. I already knew that the police were all part of it, that it was all part of a setup. Like, they even had industrial surveillance technology and all that set up, like in campers out in the field watching everything that was going on. Like, it's a pretty hardcore situation, you guys. Like, hillbillies out in the woods just messing around by themselves aren't going to get all of that high-tech police surveillance equipment hooked up throughout their campers and stuff. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, it's not impossible, but it was obvious that law enforcement was involved in this one. But anyways, I would go up and I would end up trying to give some kind of statement on behalf of Corina with the information that I had. And apparently, I guess nothing was done with that information. Or if it was, it's just gone into, information about me rather than being information that should be to bring justice to Corina's situation. But of course, they're not going to want to bring justice to any situation that would shine a light on my innocence or anything like that, which is what this would tie into. So that is my story about Corina. As far as Corina's, how I felt like this, the spirit of Corina affected me was with the car, was seeing her car when her car might not have actually been there. And then also, while I was giving a statement about her, I didn't actually know how to answer a few of the questions. And I feel like that God or and the angelic realm, God, holiness, or whatever, that they allowed for Corina to like be a part of it and to like actually take part in answering some of the questions that the state trooper was asking. So I know that that sounds weird, but there's actually video footage of me mediuming a statement to a state trooper from not just myself, but from what I feel is this, great ball of spiritual energy that is both a mixture of Corina and other people who passed away and the Spirit of God, all of them trying to talk together and to relay a message to law enforcement, there in where it was in New York, where I, would have given this information. And it was a really weird time for me. It's was one of the most I'm not really sure how to explain what that was that happened there. It was quite intense. And then I would I would kind of feel like that Corina would become part of the spirit team, who is on my side, like I said about Natalie. And like I might even, like I'll probably be saying about other videos that I make about these other people, that their names also need mentioned from the other side. So, yeah, I may not have been like this. This story is way more dramatic than I'm telling you. It is way deeper and scarier and freakier than I'm telling you. But that's at least all that I can tell you for now, about a situation that might technically still be under investigation. Either way, I'm going to act as a whistleblower on this situation, because I know that it wasn't dealt with properly. And also, whenever I gave my first statement, I thought that all that anyone would need would be to question Garrett and Robert, and that they would easily find out how Officer Boatwright was involved in this situation. But of course, why would you go question people who you already know what they did, because you guys all got together and told them what to do? So it's a real corruption issue too. So it's not just whistleblowing on one officer, it's whistleblowing on the entire network of you. And also, I feel that it's very wrong for these women to just be slain like this, and for no one to ever be held accountable, and for, no, there's not even a bulletin that says, hey, if anybody has any information regarding this, could you please bring it forward? Nothing. And I understand that that's how it has to be sometimes, but in this situation, there was a supernatural, there were actually supernatural events that happened after this woman passed away. She definitely showed up in spirit form, and there's even video footage of it that was taken by a police officer. I feel like the other people spoke through me, and that even the Holy Spirit himself for a moment spoke through me while this state trooper was questioning me, because I'm telling you guys, like, I was scared to death. I might not have looked like it, scared out of my wits, absolutely terrified. So traumatized, more traumatized than I'd ever been in my whole life whenever I showed up in New York, 400 miles away from my crappy little home in West Virginia, to try to tell somebody what was going on. And those were the closest people that I guess I could be sent to, who might not have been white. But the person who I gave the testimony to ended up being white anyways. It was a big deal to me for some reason that I find somebody that wasn't white to give the information to, because I was worried at the time that all the police around me were involved in a white gang, and maybe that's why they weren't taking my report seriously. So, but also I feel like that there could have been victims from that area in New York who were slain in the same place where I saw one of Corina's cars, where other women where I would be set up to witness a homicide and stuff like that. And that I feel like that all of these groups of people, even the deceased and, the Spirit of the Lord and universe and stuff, I feel like that they all led me to that area in New York, to those specific officers. Like, it was really, really important for some reason for me to give the information to those specific officers in that specific area, where this statue is and stuff. I know that sounds super crazy, but I knew about it before I left West Virginia. It was super weird. Like, I had a certain set of instructions, and then whenever I actually got to New York, I was actually able to see, the turtle and different things like that I was sent to and told about before, and it was really weird. And anyways, people can chalk that up to just me and how I dealt with the trauma of being made witness to homicides at the time. But, to me, it's still a very real supernatural and spiritual event that happened. And Corina Silva ends up being one of the people who, after she turned to the spirit world, I feel like she was on my side and she was trying to help me get justice and get help for, for her, for what happened to her, and for me, and for other people. And unfortunately, I'm not sure that I was actually able to take her information and get the help that people needed. I did try. We did try. I mean, they speak from beyond the grave sometimes to try to get attention and to try to get help, but it all just depends on how people down here receive them. And in her case, I don't believe that the message was properly received, nor was it received in Natalie's case, which is part of the reason why I'm reviewing them like this. And all right, so this was Corina Silva. The next one, I'm not sure who the next one is going to be, but I'm pretty sure I'm going to cover it today too. Thank you guys for watching. Peace.